what I would like to do this evening is to read, going back some distance to the 60s, and read a few poems from back then and come forward in a sort of roughly chronological order. But the first poem that I want to read is a story poem. One of the things that's happened in the last 25 years or so is that narrative has moved into, taken different forms in the poetry of the last few decades, and reasserted itself, and sometimes in very exciting ways, I think. I wasn't thinking of literary history, of course, when I wrote this poem. Someone had asked me to tell a story, and I told this story, and I thought, this story is a very unpleasant story, but it's a poem. It's a myth. It's unlike most myths, which there are many, many myths of origin. There are very seldom myths about the other end of things, and this is one of them. It's called The Last One. Well, they'd made up their minds to be everywhere, because why not? Everywhere was theirs because they thought so. They with 2 leaves, they whom the birds despise. In the middle of stones they made up their minds. They started to cut. Well, they cut everything because why not? Everything was theirs because they thought so. It fell into its shadows and they took both away, some to have, some for burning. Well, cutting everything, they came to the water. They came to the end of the day. There was one left standing. They would cut it tomorrow. They went away. The night gathered in the last branches. The shadow of the night gathered in the shadow on the water. The night and the shadow put on the same head, and it said, now. Well, in the morning they cut the last one. Like the others, the last one fell into its shadow. It fell into its shadow on the water. They took it away, its shadow stayed on the water. Well, they shrugged. They started trying to get the shadow away. They cut right to the ground. The shadow stayed whole. They laid boards on it. The shadow came out on top. They shone lights on it. The shadow got blacker and clearer. They exploded the water. The shadow rocked.
William, that was wonderful reading. Thank you.
It's a wonderful introduction, Naomi. That's what did the whole thing.
I was interested in the repeated references tonight to all that is not known, because that was something I really wanted to talk about with you. And perhaps this has to do with the season, once again. You have said the 2 sides of existence are always there in a poem. There's what you know, but the source is what you don't know. I've also heard you say all poetry comes from listening. What you're listening for is what you don't know. Sometimes it seems that what we don't know is hardly what culture respects most, or headlines, public dialogue. A few years ago, I was very taken with the Szymborska poem where she talks about how much that simple phrase, I don't know, could help us if we would only trust in it as human beings. And it seems in your poems that you have trusted in it and allowed it to lead you so many places. Would you be willing?
Well, I've felt for a long time, and if you have these notions, they tend to, and if they're really yours, they tend to go on growing with you. I've had the feeling that what we know is very, very remarkable, but it's a very tiny part of this enormous universal thing of what, not only what we don't know, but what we never will know, and what is indeed, in every sense that we understand it, unknowable. I'm not a philosopher, so I'm not going to put it in metaphysical, in nice metaphysical terms. But the ways we tend to think of ourselves, and the things that we use and need to use practically for everything in our lives involve what we know. We need what we know. We need to respect what we know. We need to pay attention to it. We need a good education plan. We need all of these things, you know. But finally, it's what a great Chinese master said in the 9th century. He said it's like a hair floating in empty space. I mean, it's so small. It's so little, and it's it's also very deceptive, because what you know can hide what you don't know and make you think that it's the real thing, and it isn't. It's only an aspect of the real thing. It's something that allows you to have a relation with the real thing, but it isn't the real thing itself. The real thing is always what you don't know. It's always this immense unknown that frightens us, you know, that we know it chiefly as something that is frightening. And of course, what we think of as the ultimate unknown, we think of death, you know, as being the ultimate unknown. It is, but it's only, even death is only part of the unknown, and this is so enormous that we can't envisage it. And the imagination, which goes beyond knowledge, it moves closer to the unknown, and of course comes out of the unknown.